3 months before our wedding, my fiance brought another woman into our home. I thought I was hearing things. Standing in the foyer with my suitcase, I noticed a pair of Chanel sandals with camellias by the shoe rack. Size 8, not my size. The estate manager, Charles, walked over to take my luggage. The look on his face was like he had just swallowed a fly. "Miss Jenkins, you've returned." "Miss Jenkins." "Not ma'am, not the future Mrs. Pierce. They used to call me Cassidy, but now even my first name was dropped." I didn't ask any questions. I changed into my slippers and headed upstairs. The wheels of my suitcase clattered loudly against the hardwood stairs, sounding like I was dragging a corpse through an empty house. The door to the master bedroom was slightly ajar. Through the crack, a woman's laughter drifted out, deliberately soft and sultry. "Donovan, do you like this nightgown? I specifically chose the champagne color. It matches your sheets so well." I didn't go in. Through the gap, I saw Alyssa Trenton. She was standing by the bed in a silk slip with thin straps, holding a peignoir up to herself. Her suitcase was splayed open on the rug. Lingerie, makeup, and skincare products were scattered everywhere, like she was marking her territory. I had slept in that bed for 2 years. Donovan had just changed the sheets last month. He told me, "Let's change the color, change the mood." Now I understood. It wasn't about the mood, it was about the person. Donovan Pierce, leaning against the headboard, was smoking. His robe was tied carelessly, exposing his chest. "If you like it, leave it out," he said. His tone was as indifferent as if he were discussing the weather, then all these empty shelves in the closet. "Can I take them?" Alyssa opened the sliding door to the walk-in closet and turned back, looking at him with shining eyes. But she bit her lower lip, and her voice dropped. "There are still someone else's clothes in here." Donovan flicked his ashes, not answering. Alyssa walked over and sat on the edge of the bed, placing a hand on his knee. "Donovan, I don't want Cassidy to think I'm taking her place. Maybe I should stay in the guest room?" After a 3-second pause, Donovan put out his cigarette in the ashtray on the nightstand. "You'll stay here," he said. "There's no need to feel marginalized." Alyssa threw herself into his arms, wrapping around him like ivy around an oak. "Donovan, you're the best." I didn't make a sound standing behind that door. My hand gripped the handle of my suitcase. My knuckles turned white from the tension. My nails dug into my palm. The sharp pain clearly reminded me that this body was still capable of feeling. Turning around, I caught my reflection in the large mirror at the end of the hall. A tailored business suit, high heels, hair neatly pulled into a chignon. Today, to secure a corporate training contract, I had spent 4 hours on a plane. I negotiated with partners in a conference room all afternoon. I ate a sad sandwich in the back of a black car. The contract was signed. Pierce Corp had secured the exclusive development rights to the South Seaport District. I had wanted to rush back and tell him the good news, but he had prepared different news for me. I walked back down the stairs, placing my foot on each step with such steady confidence that it surprised even me. Charles was still standing in the foyer. "Miss Jenkins, which room should I take your luggage to?" He asked which room. Not "Should I help you take it upstairs?" That meant even he knew the master bedroom was off limits to me now. "The guest room," I replied. Charles took the suitcase, avoiding my eyes. The curtains in the guest room were drawn, and the air held a faint smell of dampness. I sat on the edge of the bed, turning my phone screen on and off. On, then off again. The time changed from 9:10 p.m. to 9:32 p.m. Footsteps echoed from the floor above. Alyssa was probably unpacking, arranging her bright little jars and bottles on the vanity in the master bedroom. I dialed a number. It was answered after the second ring. The person on the other end remained silent. "It's me," I said. Gavin Caldwell's voice was low and steady, like cooled tea in the dead of night. "Is what you talked about before still on the table?" A moment of silence hung on the line. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., at the Manhattan Marriage Bureau." "All right." Hanging up, I stood and pulled back the curtains. The night outside was as thick as unthinned ink. The lanterns in the garden were lit, illuminating the lawn and the Dutch tulips Donovan had specially imported. I was the one who picked those varieties. Even those hadn't been replaced yet. He had replaced me first. My phone buzzed again. It was an Instagram post from Alyssa. She had taken a selfie in that champagne nightgown, leaning against the headboard in the master bedroom. The caption was just one word: home. The location tag: the Pierce Estate, Greenwich, Connecticut. Maybe she forgot to hide the post from me, or maybe she didn't. Maybe she did it on purpose. I double-tapped to like it. 30 seconds later, the post disappeared. Apparently, she finally remembered her privacy settings, but I had already taken a screenshot. I saved it to a hidden folder, the same folder that already held Cartier receipts for a bracelet Donovan had given her, hotel booking confirmations, and the cross-reference travel itineraries secretly sent to me by Donovan's assistant. I never interrogated Donovan. Not because I was forgiving, but because I was waiting. Waiting for my heart to completely turn to ice. Or waiting for the right way to leave while delivering a crushing blow. Now I had both. The next morning at 6 a.m., my makeup was flawless. I wore a deep burgundy dress, not flashy, but the dark, heavy color of dried blood. I knocked on the master bedroom door. Alyssa opened it. She was wearing Donovan's button-down shirt, the hem barely covering her thighs. Seeing me, a flash of triumph crossed her eyes. "Miss Jenkins, did something happen so early? I need Donovan." Donovan walked out of the ensuite bathroom, adjusting his tie. Seeing me in the doorway, he froze for a split second. Did something happen? His tone was completely different from how he spoke to Alyssa. With her, he was casual and careless. With me, it was business official. I used to think that was what trust sounded like. Now I knew it was apathy. "The company is sending me on a business trip to Chicago." "For about a week," I said in an even voice, as if reading an itinerary. Donovan frowned. "For how long?" I just said, "A week." "What project requires that much time?" I didn't answer his question. Instead, I smiled. "Does it concern you?" Donovan was taken aback. At that moment, Alyssa walked up and linked her arm through his. "Donovan, if Miss Jenkins is going on a trip, don't ask so many questions. Work is stressful." Saying this, she looked at me with an innocent smile. "Miss Jenkins, have a safe trip. I'll take care of the house and Donovan." "The house?" She said, "The house." I stared at her for 3 seconds, then smiled. "All right, I'm counting on you then." As I turned to leave, Donovan suddenly called out, "Cassidy." I stopped, not turning around. He paused for 2 seconds and finally said, "Take care on the road." "Got it." As I walked down the stairs, I counted in my head. From the moment I walked in, he had spoken exactly 5 full sentences to me. Did something happen? For how long? What project requires that much time? Does it concern you? Take care on the road. 5 sentences. Not a single word to ask me to stay. Not a single word to say this was wrong. Not a single word to ask how I felt. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Donovan Pierce, since you've pushed things to this extreme, don't blame me for being even more ruthless. I stepped out of the mansion. The morning sun was blinding. My phone screen lit up. A text from Gavin Caldwell. Just 3 words. "I'm out front." I turned and looked at the house where I had lived for 2 years. The curtains in the master bedroom were drawn back. Alyssa stood by the window with a cup of coffee, raising it from afar as if saluting me. I raised my hand too, saying goodbye not to her, but to every disgusting person and event inside those walls. Then, I opened my car door and drove through the gates without looking back. Once I was a safe distance away, I made a call. "Mr. Attorney, please prepare a prenuptial agreement for me. Miss Jenkins, but your wedding to Mr. Pierce isn't for another 3 months. "I won't need it for him," I interrupted, my voice as light as if I were discussing the pleasant weather. "The agreement won't be signed with Donovan Pierce." Silence fell on the other end. "It will be signed by me and someone else." I hadn't actually left. At least, not that morning. After Donovan drove off to work, only Alyssa and I were left in the mansion. I was packing my things in the guest room when she knocked. In her hands was a glass of freshly squeezed orange juice. "Miss Jenkins, drink some juice. I just made it." She was wearing my slippers. the fluffy, milky white ones with bunny ears that I bought last month. Donovan had laughed at me then, saying, "You're in your 20s and you still wear kids' stuff." Now, I watched those bunny ears being trampled by Alyssa. There was a coffee stain on the white fur. "Thanks." I took the glass and set it on the nightstand without touching it. Alyssa paced the room, running her fingers over the curtains, the vanity, the closet doors, as if inspecting her new domain. "The lighting in this room isn't very good," she said with a highly sympathetic tone. "Miss Jenkins, are you comfortable here? Should I tell Donovan to prepare the sunroom on the 3rd floor for you?" "No need." "Right," she chuckled. "You're leaving on a business trip anyway. You'll only be spending one night here." I stayed silent, opened my suitcase, and began folding my clothes. She clearly had no intention of leaving, sitting down on the edge of the bed. "Miss Jenkins, I've been wanting to thank you for a long time." My hands, mid-fold, stopped. "Thank you for taking care of Donovan these past 2 years," she said in a light, natural tone, as if stating an undeniable fact. "You can hand those duties over to me now. You deserve a rest." I neatly folded a silk blouse and placed it in a garment bag. I did it very slowly, smoothing out every crease. "How long have you known Donovan?" Alyssa didn't expect me to ask a question first. She hesitated before answering. "Half a year?" "Half a year. Donovan had proposed to me 5 months ago. He rented out an entire waterfront restaurant. When fireworks exploded in the sky, he got down on one knee, held out a ring, and said, 'Cassidy, marry me.' The fireworks were beautiful. Now I realized they probably hadn't been orchestrated just for me." "Did you know he had a fiance?" I asked. Alyssa looked down, examining her rhinestone-encrusted nails glittering under the lamp. "I knew," she said, raising a gaze so blatant it almost made me laugh. "But Donovan said there haven't been feelings between you two for a long time. He said being with you is exhausting. You're too strong. You always argue about who is right and wrong, you never act cute, and you never rely on him." She smiled faintly as she spoke. "He also said a relationship with you feels like a business negotiation. But with me, it's a real romance." I stopped packing, not because it hurt, but because Donovan had never told me any of this. What he needed, what he didn't need, what he liked, what he disliked, he never said a word. I used to ask. He would reply, "You decide." I thought that was trust. It turned out to be apathy. "Are you finished?" I looked at Alyssa. She flinched under my gaze. Her smile froze for a second, but the innocent expression quickly returned. "Miss Jenkins, don't be angry. I didn't mean to upset you. I just think that since Donovan has already made his choice, it's time for you to let go too. You can't force feelings." She stood up, smoothing down Donovan's shirt. "By the way, Donovan said we're going wedding dress shopping this weekend. You know, the wedding is in 3 months. The only bride will be me." Finally, I laughed. Not a cold smirk, but a genuine laugh. It was hilarious to me. "Well, congratulations." Alyssa tilted her head, confused by my reaction. "Miss Jenkins, are you really not mad?" "Why should I be mad?" I placed the last item in my suitcase, zipped it up, stood up, and looked at her. "You picked up the trash I threw away. I should be thanking you." Alyssa's face changed. "What did you say?" "I'm saying," I grabbed the handle of my suitcase, "I don't need Donovan Pierce anymore. If you like him, take him. You don't even need to give me a report." Alyssa's eyes instantly turned red. "Cassidy Jenkins, how dare you talk about Donovan like that? You know how amazing he is. You know how many women want to marry him. If you couldn't keep a man yourself, don't be so bitter." She cried beautifully, really. Large tears rolled down her cheeks. The tip of her nose turned red and her lips trembled slightly. I understood why Donovan had bought into it. "Done crying?" I leaned against the closet, crossing my arms. Alyssa froze. "If you're done, get out. I need to rest." She opened her mouth, probably wanting to say something else, but my glare forced the words back down her throat. She left the room. At the door, she turned back. The tears hadn't dried, but a smirk was already forming on her lips. "Cassidy, you can pretend to be calm all you want," she said. "I know your heart is bleeding." The door clicked shut. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at my hands. The ring was still on my finger, The very one Donovan slipped on when he proposed. A 3-carat emerald-cut diamond. He told me he personally selected the stone in Antwerp and had it set by Manhattan's best jeweler. I had worn it for 5 months. It left a faint indent on my ring finger. I took it off and placed it on the nightstand. The diamond glinted coldly in the lamplight, like a frozen tear. My phone rang, a text from Gavin. "My things are packed." I replied with one word. "Yes. Should I send a car for you?" "No need, I'll drive." "Good. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Don't be late." "I won't be." Conversation over. My communication with Gavin Caldwell was always this brief and to the point. Not a single wasted word. We had been classmates in business school, and he was now the CEO of Caldwell Industries. His net worth exceeded Donovan's by dozens of times. But more importantly, he owed me. He owed me a lot. Donovan returned at 8 p.m. I was having dinner in the dining room. Charles had set a separate place for me. The dishes were simple, all my favorites. Charles had worked in this house for 10 years and was probably the only one who still remembered my preferences. Donovan and Alyssa ate in the living room. Behind the sliding doors, I couldn't hear what they were talking about. Only occasional laughter drifted out. Midway through my dinner, the door slid open. Donovan walked in with a bottle of red wine. "Cassidy, we opened this bottle to see you off." After giving our bedroom to another woman, he decided to see me off. I put down my fork and looked up at him. "All right." Donovan poured 2 glasses. He handed one to me and kept the other. He tapped his glass against mine. A light clink rang out. "Take care on the road." The exact same words as this morning. I took a sip. The wine was dry. "Donovan, is there anything you want to say to me?" He held his glass. His gaze lingered on my face for a few seconds before darting away. "No." I nodded. "Okay, me neither." He turned and walked away. When the door slid shut, I saw Alyssa standing just outside it, wrapping her arms around him, pressing her whole body against his. I finished the wine in one gulp, stood up, and carried my empty plate to the kitchen. Charles was washing dishes. Seeing me, he rushed over, trying to take the plate from my hands. "Miss Jenkins, leave it. I'll do it." "Charles." I set the plate in the sink and leaned against the counter. "Thank you for looking out for me these past 2 years." Charles's hand stopped under the running water. "I'm leaving tomorrow, and I won't be coming back. Take care of yourself." Charles lowered his head. His shoulders trembled slightly. "Miss Jenkins, they've wronged you so badly." I smiled and patted his shoulder. "Wronged? Not at all." When I walked out of the kitchen, the living room was empty. Footsteps and female laughter drifted down from the stairs, moving higher and higher. I returned to the guest room. Closing the door, I leaned my back against it and closed my eyes for 3 seconds. Just 3 seconds. Then I opened them and started packing my final belongings. The ring was still on the nightstand. The light reflecting off the diamond hit the wood surface like a teardrop ready to fall. I didn't take it with me. At 2 a.m., the entire estate descended into absolute silence. Only the nightlights in the hallway cast a dim yellow glow, turning the passage into a tunnel leading out. I walked out of the guest room with my suitcase. I tried to roll it over the hardwood floors as quietly as possible. Step 2, 3. Every footfall echoed in time with my heartbeat. Passing the master bedroom, I paused for a moment. A faint sliver of light leaked from under the door. Alyssa apparently wasn't used to sleeping in total darkness. I could hear the steady breathing of 2 people. I averted my eyes and kept walking. As I walked down the stairs, my phone lit up. A message from Gavin. A photo of a key resting on a dark marble countertop. The keychain had a silver plate engraved with a C. Immediately after, a second message arrived. "The apartment is ready. Tribeca, 3,000 square feet. Code. Your birth date." I stared at the screen. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I didn't know what to reply. He must have guessed my hesitation. A third message came through. "It's not charity. When you helped me, you didn't ask if I needed it either." I replied with one word. "Okay." In the foyer, next to the Chanel sandals with camellias, I saw a pair of men's dress shoes, Donovan's shoes. The toes were pointing toward the exit. Light creases marked the leather. He had worn them today. I opened the bottom drawer of the shoe cabinet and took out a car key. The white Porsche Panamera in the garage was bought with my own money. The car, the insurance, the maintenance, everything was paid by me. Donovan had wanted to buy me a car, but I refused. I told him it was safer to rely on what I bought myself. Looking back now, I realized we had never been on the same wavelength. He needed a woman who knew how to pout and depend on him, and from the very beginning, I only knew how to depend on myself. The garage door slowly rolled up. The headlights illuminated the black Maybach parked ahead. It was Donovan's car. The license plate ended in 777. I backed the Porsche out of the garage. Passing the Maybach, I rolled down my window and glanced at the license plate. Then, I hit the gas and drove out of the estate gates. In the rearview mirror, the house I had lived in for 2 years grew smaller and more distant, until it turned into a blurred point of light, dissolving into the night. My phone was connected to the car's Bluetooth. Gavin called. "You left?" "Yes." "Are you crying?" I froze for a second, then chuckled. "No, that's good." His voice was low, slightly raspy, as if he had just woken up. "He isn't worth it." Those 4 words warmed me more than all the declarations of love Donovan had muttered over the past 2 years. "Gavin, after we get the marriage certificate tomorrow, can I move into that apartment you mentioned?" A momentary silence fell on the line, and then he laughed. "You already have the keys, don't you?" At 3:40 a.m., I parked outside a high-rise building in the center of the city. This was my own apartment. Donovan didn't know it existed. I bought it 2 years ago, paying the down payment from my savings. The monthly mortgage was deducted straight from my salary account. I didn't do it as a backup plan. I just believed a woman should always have her own retreat. Now, this retreat had become my only sanctuary. The elevator took me to the 22nd floor. The door unlocked with my fingerprint. A 1-bedroom condo, about 650 square feet. Light gray curtains, a dark green velvet sofa I picked out myself. All the furniture was covered in dust sheets, like presents waiting for their time. I pulled the sheet off the sofa and sat down. I opened the photo album on my phone. The first photo was from the day Donovan proposed. Fireworks in the sky, him on one knee with a ring. I stood opposite him, hands covering my mouth, eyes full of tears. The photo was taken by a waiter. Great angle, great lighting like a movie poster. The second photo, the day we moved into the Greenwich estate. He stood by the door, reaching out his hand, saying, "Welcome home." The third, his birthday. I cooked a whole table of food. I snapped a picture of him blowing out the candles. The warm yellow light beautifully illuminated his face. I scrolled through the photos one by one. Reaching the last one, my fingers lingered over the screen for a long time. The last photo was dated today. It was the crack in the master bedroom door, Alyssa in the champagne nightgown sitting on the bed, Donovan, leaning against the headboard, smoking. I hadn't taken a picture of that scene, but my eyes had memorized it. I selected every photo in the album and hit delete. A dialog box popped up. Delete 321 photos? Confirm. The screen blinked. The album was empty. Then, I opened my contacts and found Donovan Pierce. His profile picture was a side profile I had taken on a weekend. Sunlight streaming through the window as he sat on the couch reading documents. A handsome profile. I opened the contact and hit delete. Another dialog box. Delete contact Donovan Pierce? Confirm. Unmatched on text apps. Unfollowed on Instagram. Removed from Venmo. Deleted his delivery address from Amazon. Wiped his order history from Uber Eats. In 40 minutes, I scrubbed Donovan Pierce from every corner of this phone, like using an eraser to rub out a misspelled word. At 5 a.m., I leaned back against the sofa and closed my eyes for a moment. When I opened them, the sky outside was already brightening. I washed my face, reapplied my makeup, and changed clothes. Not into yesterday's burgundy dress, but a crisp white button-down shirt and black tailored trousers. A sharp business look, as if I were going to sign a major contract. Before leaving, I looked at myself in the full-length mirror. 26 years old, flawless skin, no redness in my eyes, lips capable of forming a perfect smile. Excellent. The marriage bureau opened at 9 a.m. I arrived 20 minutes early. A few couples were already waiting outside. Some held hands, some chatted quietly. The girls held small bouquets. The guys wore suits. Everyone had the same expression on their faces, a mix of anticipation for the future and nervous excitement. I stood at the back of the line, empty-handed. My phone rang. Donovan. I answered without saying a word. Cassidy, where are you? His voice was thick with sleep. Charles said you left for a business trip in the middle of the night, he added. You have to leave in the middle of the night to catch early flights, I said. Silence hung on the line. Then, I heard Alyssa's voice in the background, softly calling out, Donovan, who is it? It's nothing, go back to sleep. Donovan's voice muffled, evidently covering the receiver. Then he spoke to me again. Cassidy, did you go into the master bedroom yesterday? No. Then who put the ring on the nightstand? I leaned against a stone pillar near the entrance and looked up at the sky. Perfect weather today, not a cloud in sight. Ideal for a wedding. I did. Donovan's voice pitched higher. You took off the ring? Yes. Cassidy, what does this mean? Nothing, I said. The ring was too tight. It was uncomfortable. I paid $1 million for that. I know. I cut him off. That's why I left it for your next bride. You're welcome. The sound of something shattering against a floor echoed through the phone. Cassidy Jenkins, you come back here right now. Can't. I'm boarding. How dare you? I hung up and turned the phone off. Exactly at 9 a.m., a black Rolls-Royce pulled up to the curb. The door opened, and Gavin stepped out. He wore a dark gray suit with no tie. The top 2 buttons of his shirt were undone, exposing his collarbone. His hair wasn't slicked back as perfectly as usual. A few strands fell across his forehead, softening his features. He walked up to me, looking down. Waiting long? 20 minutes. Traffic, he said. The word sounded slightly unnatural, as if a man entirely unaccustomed to making excuses had struggled to squeeze out an explanation. I couldn't help but smile. Gavin, you look so cute when you're stuck in traffic. He shot me a look, saying nothing, but the tips of his ears turned slightly red. Let's go. He nodded toward the city hall doors. Wait. I pulled 2 documents from my bag. Sign this before we go in. Gavin took them, flipped through a few pages, and raised an eyebrow in surprise. A prenuptial agreement. Yes. Separate property, separate debts. Assets acquired during the marriage belong to each individual separately. In the event of a divorce, there won't be a divorce. I looked up at him. He handed the contract back to me. I'm not signing this. Why? Because it's unnecessary. He looked right into my eyes. His voice wasn't loud, but every word drove home like a nail into stone. I, Gavin Caldwell, am getting married without the intention of ever getting divorced. The sun hit him from the side, casting a shadow that split his face into light and dark. I suddenly felt that today really was perfect weather. The agreement still needs to be signed, I said. It's not a question of trust. It's just the rules. Gavin looked at me for 3 seconds. Then he pulled a pen from the inside pocket of his jacket, flipped to the last page, and signed his name. His handwriting was sharp, forceful. He handed the contract to me. Your turn. I signed. Cassidy Jenkins. Then he folded the agreement and slipped it back into his pocket. I'll keep this. On our golden anniversary, we'll burn it. I couldn't hold back a laugh. Golden anniversary? You'll be in your 70s by then. What? He turned his head. Think I'm old? No. I stopped laughing and looked at him seriously. I'm just afraid you'll regret it by then. Gavin didn't answer. He pushed open the heavy glass door and held it, letting me walk in first. The moment the door closed behind me, I heard him say something very quietly. So quietly his words almost drowned in the noise of the lobby. I won't be the one regretting it. The marriage registration took 10 minutes. There was a line inside, but Gavin didn't wait in it. He led me to a side door marked Private Registration Room. A uniformed clerk stood by the door. Seeing Gavin, he immediately straightened up. Mr. Caldwell, please, come right in. Everything is ready for you. I glanced at Gavin. You arranged this in advance? Yes. After your call yesterday, The room was small but elegantly decorated. A pristine white lace tablecloth covered the desk. A vase held a fresh bouquet of white roses. Sunlight streamed through the large window, painting the room a warm gold. A middle-aged woman in glasses sat behind the desk. 2 blank marriage certificates lay in front of her. "Mr. Caldwell, Miss Jenkins, please have a seat." We sat down. She pulled out a red velvet tray holding 2 simple wedding bands. "Mr. Caldwell brought these by yesterday. You can try them on." I picked up the platinum band. Engraved on the inside were 2 letters, AC on one side, AJ on the other. No grandiose vows of eternal love, just 2 initials slotted together like puzzle pieces. "Does it fit?" Gavin asked. I slipped it onto my ring finger. "Perfectly." "How did you know my size?" He didn't answer. He just put his ring on, then offered me his hand, palm up. I placed my hand in his. His fingers closed, wrapping around my palm. Dry and warm. The grip wasn't tight, but it was incredibly secure. The clerk smiled. "You can fill out the forms." The form was simple. Name, gender, date of birth, SSN, marital status. When I reached the marital statuses box, my pen hovered for a second. Single. 26 years old. First marriage. 3 months ago, I was planning a completely different wedding, and now here I was, filling out paperwork to marry a different man. Life truly was bizarre. After filling out the forms, the clerk took them, stamped them, and handed us the official certificates. The sound of the stamp was definitive. Thud. "Congratulations, you are now legally married." Gavin took both certificates, glanced at them, and handed one to me. "Here." I took it and opened it. My crisp white shirt, his dark gray suit. We weren't smiling broadly, just slightly turning up the corners of our mouths. But somehow, this felt infinitely more harmonious than any picture Donovan and I had ever taken. Leaving the registration room, I pulled out my phone to check the time. 9:10 a.m. From the moment we walked in to the moment we left, exactly 10 minutes had passed. Couples in the lobby were still waiting in line. Some dozed on benches, some scrolled on their phones, some tried to soothe fussy toddlers. No one noticed us stepping out. No one knew that this woman in the white button-down had just locked down a marriage in 10 minutes flat. Standing on the steps of City Hall, I took a deep breath. The air smelled of flowers. I didn't know where the scent was coming from. "Hungry?" Gavin stood next to me, hands in his pockets. His voice was as indifferent as if he were asking about the weather. "A little. What do you want?" "Blueberry pancakes with maple syrup." He looked at me, the corners of his mouth twitching. Apparently, the answer surprised him. "I thought you'd say brunch at a French bistro or avocado toast." "Today, I want pancakes," I said. He nodded, opened the car door for me, and then got behind the wheel himself. Starting the engine, he turned down a small side street and 5 minutes later pulled up to an unassuming diner. The place was small, with a few patio tables out front. The air smelled of freshly brewed coffee and griddled batter. Gavin took off his jacket, draped it over the back of a chair, rolled up his sleeves, and called out to the server. 2 orders of blueberry pancakes, 2 cappuccinos, and a cinnamon roll. The server, seeing him, froze for a second. "Oh, Mr. Caldwell. What brings you here?" "Brought someone for breakfast," he said, pulling out a chair for me. The server's gaze swept over my face, then he broke into a wide smile. Of course, have a seat. Coming right up." The pancakes arrived steaming hot, straight off the griddle, dripping with fresh maple syrup. The coffee was aromatic. I cut a piece of pancake and dragged it through the syrup. "Gavin, you said you owed me a lot." "Now we're even." He stopped eating for a second. "No. Then what is this?" I pointed at the food. He placed his cinnamon roll onto my plate. "That debt I will be paying you back for the rest of my life." "This." He paused. "This." I wanted to do myself. I didn't ask any more questions. I lowered my head and drank my coffee. It was delicious. After breakfast, Gavin drove me to the building he had mentioned. "The code is the year and date of your birth. 6 digits. He handed me a key. "The place is fully cleaned. If you need anything, tell the concierge. And you?" You won't be living here? He glanced at me. Do you want me to live here? I didn't know what to say. Gavin pressed the key into my hand. His fingers lightly brushed my palm. Take your time. Live alone for a while. When you decide, you'll tell me. He got into the car. The Rolls-Royce engine purred quietly, and he pulled out of the driveway. I stood there, gripping the key. The silver plate on the keychain gleamed in the sunlight. Engraved on it was the letter C. The elevator took me to the 28th floor. I entered the code. The lock clicked softly. The hallway lights flickered on automatically, flooding the corridor with a warm yellow glow. I slipped off my shoes and walked inside barefoot. In the living room, floor-to-ceiling windows spanned the entire wall. Curtains made of light gray linen framed them. The wind blew in from a cracked window, making the fabric sway gently. The sofa was dark blue velvet. On the coffee table sat an orchid with pale purple petals holding tiny drops of water. On the dining table lay a white envelope. I opened it. Inside was a black titanium credit card and a note. The note had just one line, written in Gavin's sharp handwriting. The PIN is the same as the door code. Buy whatever you want. Don't hold back. I folded the note and slipped it back into the envelope with the card. Then I walked into the bedroom. The bed was massive, fitted with crisp white sheets. Folded neatly on the pillow were silk pajamas. I picked them up and checked the tag. My size. On the nightstand stood a photo frame. It was a picture of Gavin and me, taken 3 years ago at a business school alumni mixer. I was standing by a window with a glass of wine. He walked up behind me, whether by accident or on purpose, and we ended up in the same shot. I wasn't looking at the camera, and neither was he. We were looking in different directions, but standing so close that the hem of my dress brushed his trousers. When did he save this picture? I placed the frame back and walked over to the window, pulling the curtains completely open. From the 28th floor, half the city was visible. Sunlight caught the wedding band on my ring finger. Engraved on the inside was the letter J. I spun the ring, running my thumb over the engraving. At that moment, my phone rang. Not my personal phone, the second phone I kept in my bag. It only had one saved contact. Donovan's assistant, I answered. Miss Jenkins. Donovan is looking for you like a madman. He told me to check your flights, but there's no record of any ticket under your name with any airline. He also had me check hotel bookings. Nothing. The assistant's voice dropped to a whisper. Miss Jenkins. Donovan is tearing up the office right now, he said. He said if you don't come back, He what? I leaned against the glass, looking out over the city. He'll throw away all the things you left at the estate. I scoffed. Tell him to throw them away. But your things, what I took with me is mine, I said. What I left behind, I don't need. Hanging up, I turned that phone off too. Then I lay down on the massive bed and closed my eyes. The sheets smelled of cedar. Maybe it was fabric softener. Or maybe it was the scent of Gavin. I buried my face in the pillow and took a deep breath. My heart beat slowly and steadily. Not like before at the Pierce estate, where every sound from the master bedroom made it race erratically, like a bird trapped in a cage. Now, everything was different. The cage was open, and the bird had flown away. Donovan realized something was wrong on the third day. Everything that happened during those 3 days, I later learned from Charles. The estate manager spoke to me on the phone in hushed, trembling tones, as if describing a disaster he had witnessed firsthand. On the first day, Donovan didn't look for me. He went to work as usual, held meetings, and during his lunch break, Alyssa brought him a home-cooked meal. Alyssa took a dozen selfies in the elevator of the Pierce Corp Tower and posted them on Instagram with captions ranging from "brought lunch for my love" to "everyday life of a model wife." That evening, he took Alyssa to a French restaurant, the very one he had promised to take me to. I had tried 3 times to book a table there without success. For him, it took one phone call. Alyssa took pictures of the wine, the steak, the dessert, Donovan's hands cutting the meat, the night view from the window. Compiling 9 photos, she posted them with the caption, "With the right person, every day is a celebration." Charles said Donovan drank heavily that night. Alyssa had to support him by the arm as they walked inside. Passing the guest room, he stopped. Did Cassidy call today? No, Alyssa replied. Donovan stared at the closed guest room door for several seconds before Alyssa led him upstairs. On the second day, Donovan started looking for me. He called my cell turned off. He sent an iMessage, failed to deliver. He ordered his assistant to track my movements. The assistant scoured all airline and hotel databases but found absolutely zero records connected to me. He began to panic. Charles said he paced the living room for a long time, gripping his phone, dialing my number over and over again. Every time, the mechanical female voice repeated, "The subscriber you have dialed is unavailable." Alyssa came downstairs in a silk slip, holding a glass of milk. "Donovan, stop calling. She's not a child. She won't get lost. Maybe she just wants to be alone." Donovan turned and glared at her. "Shut up." The glass in Alyssa's hand shook. "Donovan." I said, "Shut up." It was the first time Donovan had yelled at Alyssa. Charles said Alyssa's face looked as if she had been slapped, but she quickly recovered. Set down the glass, walked over, and placed a hand on his shoulder. "I'm sorry, I'm just worried about Cassidy. She's all alone in a strange city. What if something happens?" Her voice was as soft as melting butter. Donovan didn't push her away, but he didn't look at her either. He stared at the red undelivered notification on his screen, typed out a message, deleted it, and then threw the phone onto the couch. "Find her friends' numbers. Call all of them." The assistant called everyone. My friends' answers were all roughly the same. "Cassidy? Isn't she with you?" "I don't know, she hasn't called me lately. Probably on a business trip. She'll be back in a few days." No one knew where I was, because I hadn't told anyone. On the third day, Donovan lost his mind. He forced his assistant to pull the security camera footage. The recording showed me walking out of the guest room at 2 a.m. with my suitcase, stopping for a second by the master bedroom, then walking down the stairs without looking back. The foyer lights flicked on for a moment, then turned off. The garage door slowly rolled up. The white Porsche pulled out of the gates, the taillights leaving 2 red streaks in the night, getting farther and farther away until they vanished. Donovan replayed the footage over and over. Charles said he sat in his home office, glued to the computer, looping the video as if searching for a clue. He saw me pause by his bedroom. He saw my straight posture as I walked down the stairs. He saw me open the shoe cabinet and take the car keys. He saw the exact moment the Porsche passed the gates, how, in the rearview mirror, my profile flashed for a second. No tears, no hesitation, no looking back. Then he ordered the guest room to be turned upside down. The closet was empty. The vanity was empty. There was nothing on the nightstand except a glass with leftover water. That 3-carat diamond ring sat on the nightstand in the master bedroom. The diamond sparkled under the lamp. Underneath the ring was a note. It had just 4 words. "I don't need you." Typed, not handwritten. I deliberately used a printer, because handwriting betrays emotion, but printed letters are as cold as contract clauses. Donovan crumpled the note, smoothed it out, and crumpled it again. The paper turned into a mangled ball in his palm. By the time he smoothed it out again, the ink had smeared from his sweat. "Find her." He slammed the note onto the desk. His voice was hoarse, like sandpaper scraping metal. "Turn the whole city upside down if you have to. But find her." His assistant asked, "Mr. Pierce, should we file a police report?" Donovan was quiet for a long time. "Report what?" His voice suddenly dropped to a whisper. "She's not missing. She left." He finally said it out loud. She left. Not kidnapped, not in an accident, not a missing person. She just packed her bags, took off the ring, and drove out of his life at 2 a.m. Cleanly, permanently. Meanwhile, I was sitting on the dark blue velvet sofa in Gavin's 3,000-square-foot penthouse. By my feet was a steaming mug of tea, and in my hands I held a document. The document was delivered by Gavin's assistant. The cover read, "Analytical Report on the South Seaport District Development Project by Pierce Corp." I opened to the first page. Dense rows of data and charts, all pointing to one thing. Pierce Corp's investment in this plot of land carried monumental risks. This was the exact plot I had fought for on my business trip. Donovan thought that by securing the exclusive development rights, he had won. He didn't know that a planned subway extension ran right beneath the plot. According to city zoning plans, a subway entrance was to be placed on exactly 1/3 of the project's footprint. The moment the city published the blueprints, Pierce Corp's entire development plan would have to be scrapped, and the initial billions of dollars invested would evaporate. I had discovered this issue during the negotiations. I didn't tell Donovan, because that evening, standing with my suitcase outside the master bedroom door, I had heard him say to Alyssa, "There's no need to feel marginalized." The doorbell rang. I set the documents down and went to answer. Gavin stood at the door, holding 2 takeout bags. Dinner. He shook the bags. The spicy aroma of garlic and chili wafted out. How special from that high-end Thai place downstairs. Didn't know if you liked spicy food. I do. I took the bags from him and headed to the kitchen. Plating the food, I said, "When Donovan bought this land, he didn't run a geological survey or study the city's urban plan. He only looked at the location and the price point. Thought he got it cheap." Gavin leaned against the doorframe, crossing his arms. "And you didn't remind him? Why should I?" I set down a steaming plate of pad krapow. "He's so smart he should figure it out himself." Gavin smiled. It was the first time I saw him laugh out loud. Not a polite smirk, but a genuine laugh. His eyes crinkled, showing the tip of a canine tooth. "Cassidy Jenkins, you're more ruthless than I thought. Thanks for the compliment." We sat down to eat. The food was so spicy it brought tears to my eyes, but I couldn't stop. Midway through dinner, Gavin's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and turned it toward me. Donovan Pierce. "Should I answer?" he asked. I picked up a piece of basil chicken. "Answer it." Gavin hit the green button and put it on speaker. Donovan's voice blared from the phone, raspy as if it had been ground down. "Gavin, I have a matter to discuss with you." "Speak." "You know Cassidy Jenkins. You two went to school together. Has she contacted you?" Gavin glanced at me. I nodded. "She has." Silence fell on the line, followed by the sound of Donovan's accelerated breathing. "Where is she? Do you really think I'd tell you?" "Gavin!" Donovan's voice spiked sharply. "She is my fiancée." "Is she?" Gavin's voice was absolute ice. "Then why did your fiancé move out of your house in the middle of the night?" More silence. A long one. I thought Donovan had hung up. Then his voice sounded again, much quieter this time, as if something was crushing him. "What did she say to you?" "She said she doesn't need you anymore." With that, Gavin hung up and flipped the phone face down. "Eat." I looked at the food on my plate. "Gavin, do you think he'll find me here?" "He won't." Gavin placed another piece of chicken onto my plate. "And even if he does, he wouldn't dare walk in." "Why?" I looked up at him. The warm yellow light from the pendant lamp reflected in his eyes. "Because this isn't his territory." A week passed. I lived in Gavin's apartment for 7 days. During those 7 days, I deactivated all my social media, changed my SIM card, slept in until noon, sunbathed by the floor-to-ceiling windows, read books, and drank tea. Gavin came over every evening for dinner. Sometimes he brought takeout, sometimes he cooked. He was a surprisingly good cook, especially his honey-glazed short ribs. On the 7th evening, he brought an invitation. Heavy charcoal paper with silver embossing. The Caldwell Foundation Charity Gala. Host: The Caldwell Group. Location: the Plaza Hotel Grand Ballroom. Time: the day after tomorrow, 7 p.m. He placed the invitation on the coffee table. I picked it up and opened the guest list. There were many familiar names on the page. Donovan Pierce's name was there too. Beside it, a subnote. Co-organizer. Accompanied by Alyssa Trenton. "You arranged this?" I asked. Gavin sat on the couch, casually crossing one leg over the other, as if discussing something trivial. "The charity gala happens every year. We simply added Pierce Corp to the guest list this year." "Why?" "Because I wanted to see." He looked right into my eyes. "Do you want him to see?" "See me as Gavin Caldwell's wife." "I do," I said. He smiled, pulled a dark blue velvet box from his jacket pocket, and set it next to the invitation. "Then wear this." I opened the box. Inside was a necklace, a teardrop sapphire pendant surrounded by a halo of diamonds. Under the lamplight, It radiated a deep midnight blue, as if a piece of the night sky was trapped inside it. Beneath the necklace lay matching sapphire and diamond stud earrings. This is too expensive. The jewelry worn by Gavin Caldwell's wife cannot be cheap. He stood up, picked up the necklace, walked behind me, and carefully fastened the clasp at the nape of my neck. His fingers brushed my skin cool, but the spot where he touched instantly burned hot. I'll pick you up at 7, the day after tomorrow. On the night of the charity gala, I wore a floor-length black velvet gown. The neckline perfectly showcased the sapphire. I swept my hair up into an elegant updo, showing off the earrings. The woman in the mirror didn't look like me, not because of the makeup or the dress, but because of the look in her eyes. In the past, standing next to Donovan, my gaze always held a trace of eager caution. Before every event, I would check my appearance multiple times, terrified of embarrassing him in front of his partners. In photos, I made sure to lean into him, link my arm through his, and put on a standardized smile. Back then, I was Donovan Pierce's fiance. Now, I am Gavin Caldwell's wife. Not an accessory, not a piece of jewelry, but the person standing equal beside him. At exactly 7, Gavin arrived. He wore a 3-piece black suit. His tie was midnight blue, matching my sapphires. His hair was slicked back flawlessly, exposing his high forehead. He looked like he had stepped off a magazine cover. Seeing me, his gaze lingered for a moment. Well? I did a small spin. Stunning, he said, holding out his hand. I placed my hand in his, and we stepped into the elevator together. Our silhouettes reflected in the mirrored walls. He was half a head taller than me. I held onto his arm. The hem of my dress brushed his trousers, just like in that photo from 3 years ago. The Plaza Hotel's grand ballroom blazed with light. A red carpet at the entrance, flanked by reporters and flashing cameras. The concierge greeting guests immediately stepped forward upon seeing Gavin. Mr. Caldwell, right this way, please. Your seat is at the head table, and your companion. The concierge's eyes fell on me, and he hesitated for a second. This is my wife. Gavin's voice was low, but several reporters standing nearby whipped their heads around. I felt camera lenses instantly lock onto us. Wife? The concierge nearly lost his composure. Mr. Caldwell, you got married? Yes, a few days ago. Gavin wrapped his arm around my waist, pulling me close against him. Please be so kind as to add my wife's name to my place card. When we entered the ballroom, many guests had already arrived. The head table sat in the dead center, adorned with floral arrangements and name cards. Gavin's seat was the absolute centerpiece. Next to his card sat another one, freshly written by hand. The ink hadn't even dried yet, Mrs. Caldwell. Every eye in the room locked onto me. I heard the quiet whispers rippling through the crowd. Who is that? When did Caldwell get married? I've never seen her. What family is she from? Wait, isn't that the girl who was with Pierce? Cassidy something? I sat down next to Gavin with perfect composure. He pulled out my chair for me and only took his seat after I was settled. The movement was so natural that everyone realized this wasn't just a gentlemanly gesture, it was a habit. A stir rippled at the ballroom entrance. Donovan Pierce had arrived. He wore a dark gray suit. His face looked gaunt, with dark circles under his eyes visible even from a distance. Alyssa held onto his arm. She wore a champagne-colored mermaid gown and a pearl necklace. She beamed, posing for the cameras. Then her gaze swept past the head table, past Gavin, and landed on me. Her smile froze. Donovan saw me too. He stopped dead in his tracks. Even from across the vast room, I watched his expression morph from shock to confusion, from confusion to rage, and from rage to a kind of profound bewilderment I had never seen before. He opened his mouth but didn't make a sound. Alyssa tugged at his arm. Donovan, our seats are over there. Donovan didn't budge. He shoved Alyssa's hand away and marched straight toward the head table, walking so fast his dress shoes practically hammered against the marble floor. He stopped right in front of me. Cassidy. I looked up at him. Long time no see, Mr. Pierce. Not Donovan. Not Pierce. Mr. Pierce. His Adam's apple bobbed. Where have you been all these days? Why didn't you answer my calls? Why? His eyes dragged down to the sapphire necklace resting against my collarbone, to Gavin's arm draped casually over the back of my chair, and finally to the handwritten place card on the table. Mrs. Caldwell. The two words stabbed into his eyes like daggers. You got married. His voice was barely a whisper. Yes. To who? Gavin stood up. He was half a head taller than Donovan and looked down at him with zero expression. To me. Donovan clenched his fist so tightly his knuckles turned white. Cassidy, we were engaged for 5 months. You leave without a word, and immediately marry someone else. His voice was quiet, but every word was forced out through gritted teeth. Did you play me? Play you? I stood up and looked him dead in the eyes. Donovan, you brought another woman into our home, moved her into our bedroom, let her wear my slippers, and let her use my vanity. And after all that, you have the nerve to ask if I played you. Donovan's face turned completely pale. Alyssa just stayed for a couple of days. So the wedding date needed to be transferred to her name? He froze. How did you know? Alyssa posted a photo on Instagram, I said. Location tag, a bridal salon. Caption, wedding day. You were standing behind her. Your reflection was in the mirror. Donovan's lips moved, but he couldn't form a word. At that moment, Alyssa walked over. She linked her arm through Donovan's, looked me and Gavin up and down, and then smiled. Miss Jenkins, congratulations. I didn't expect you to find a replacement so quickly. She put specific emphasis on the word replacement. I didn't even look at her. I looked at Gavin. Husband. Saying that word, I froze for a split second myself. Gavin looked at me, a spark flashing in his eyes. Yes? This lady is saying you're a replacement. I slipped my hand into his. What do you think? Gavin took my hand. His thumb stroked my wedding band. Then he raised his head, looking right past Alyssa directly at Donovan. Mr. Pierce, he said. His voice wasn't loud, but the entire ballroom fell dead silent. What you threw away is what I spent 3 years trying to get. So who is the replacement here? Donovan's face lost whatever color was left. He stared at me. An emotion I couldn't comprehend raged in his eyes. Cassidy. Mr. Pierce. I cut him off. Tonight is a charity gala, not a high school reunion. Your seat is over there. I tipped my chin toward the far corner of the room, a table shoved against the back wall, the worst seat in the house with the worst view. Gavin had prepared it specifically for them. Donovan didn't move. He stared at me for a long time, so long that guests at the neighboring tables started whispering. Finally, he lowered his head, turned, and walked away. Alyssa chased after him in her high heels, the train of her dress dragging awkwardly across the floor. They sat at that corner table. Alyssa's face was dark. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Not a trace remained of the radiant smile she had walked in with. Donovan sat down and never looked at her once. His gaze cut through the vast ballroom, past the flowers and the candles and the crowd, locking directly onto the head table, onto me. Gavin handed me a glass of champagne, leaned down slightly, and murmured close to my ear, "Well played." I wasn't playing, I replied. His hand holding the glass paused for a fraction of a second. I turned my head and looked at him. The crystal chandeliers reflected in his eyes. When I called you my husband, I wasn't playing. The evening progressed, and midway through, Alyssa decided to make a move. The charity auction began. The first item was a vintage pearl necklace. The auctioneer grandly detailed its history belonging to some Gilded Age socialite, spending years abroad, and finally returning home. Starting bid, $2,000. Gavin raised his paddle. $2,500. A lady at the next table raised it to $3,000. Gavin, $3,500. At that moment, a sickly sweet voice echoed from the far corner. $5,000. It was Alyssa. She held her paddle up, chin raised high, wearing the smile of a victor. After placing her bid, she shot a look our way, her eyes lingering on me. The implication was clear. This necklace was going to be hers. The auctioneer excitedly shouted, $5,000 from Miss Trenton. Do I hear more? Gavin went to raise his paddle again, but I stopped him. Don't. He looked at me. That necklace wouldn't suit you anyway. I said quietly, but loud enough for the neighboring tables to hear. Pearls are valued for their roundness and luster. These pearls are unevenly sized and their luster is dull. Even 2,000 is an overpay. Let her take it. Alyssa's smile hardened. The auctioneer awkwardly cleared his throat. $5,000 going once. $5,000 going twice. Sold. Congratulations, Miss Trenton. Alyssa won the necklace, but the look on her face was like she had just swallowed battery acid. The next item was a jade bracelet. Emerald green, as translucent as frozen spring water. Starting bid. $10,000. This time, Alyssa didn't raise her paddle. Not because she didn't want to, but because she couldn't. 10 grand was serious money to her. And Donovan, since the moment he sat down, he hadn't looked at anyone. His gaze was anchored to our table. Gavin raised his paddle. $20,000. The ballroom went silent, jumping straight from 10 to 20. This wasn't an auction, it was a sweep. No one dared to counterbid. The auctioneer struck his gavel, his hands practically shaking. The bracelet was brought to our table. Gavin took it, picked up my left hand, and slid it onto my wrist. The vibrant green jade looked breathtaking against my pale skin. "Now this suits you," he said. I felt the stare from the corner burning hotter. Donovan was looking at me, not at my face, but at my wrist. At the bracelet. He remembered. He remembered me telling him about how my grandmother had a jade bracelet, a family heirloom passed down through generations, which my aunt had lost. I told him that one day I would buy one exactly like it, not as a status symbol, but to honor my grandmother's memory. I had mentioned it to Donovan more than once. He always replied, "Yeah, sure. We'll go look at some eventually." And that was always the end of it. Now, this bracelet was on my wrist. And Gavin had bought it. Donovan suddenly stood up. His chair screeched harshly against the floor. Everyone at the surrounding tables turned around. "Donovan!" Alyssa grabbed his sleeve. He ripped his arm away and marched straight to our table. "Cassidy, we need to talk." Gavin set down his champagne flute. "Mr. Pierce, you are interrupting my wife's dinner. This is between her and me." Donovan ignored Gavin, keeping his eyes entirely on me. 5 minutes. I picked up my napkin, dabbed my lips, and stood up. "All right. 5 minutes." I looked at Gavin. He nodded, letting me know he was fine with it. In the hallway outside the ballroom, a thick carpet swallowed the sound of our footsteps. Crystal sconces on the walls cast a dim yellow glow, throwing bizarre shadows across Donovan's face. "What do you want to talk about?" I leaned against the wall, crossing my arms. "Did you really marry him? The certificate is in my bag. Want to see it?" Donovan clenched and unclenched his fists. "Why? Give me just one reason." "A reason?" I tilted my head. "Donovan, the night you brought Alyssa home, I was standing outside the bedroom door. I heard you tell her, 'There's no need to feel marginalized.' That reason is enough." His pupils contracted. "You were outside the door. I heard everything from start to finish. How you let her live in our bedroom, use my closet, wear your shirt. And the next morning, when I was saying goodbye, you told me, 'Take care on the road.'" The hallway was dead silent. Only the low hum of the air conditioning could be heard. "Donovan, I gave you a chance." My voice was as light as a feather dropping onto the carpet. "I asked if there was anything you wanted to say to me. You said no. It's too late now." I turned to leave. He grabbed my wrist. Hard. His nails dug into my skin. "Cassidy, you can't do this to me. We were together for 2 years, and you married another man in 10 minutes. His voice was quiet, but every word was wrung out through his teeth. I looked at his hand crushing my wrist, then up at him. "Donovan, it took you 5 minutes to move Alyssa into our bedroom. Compared to you," I dragged my feet. His fingers loosened. "Cassidy. One more thing." I pulled my phone from my clutch, found a picture, and turned the screen to him. "That plot in the South Seaport district you bought. The city's subway expansion blueprints were published last week. See for yourself." Donovan took the phone. On the screen was a highly detailed schematic, a dashed red line cut straight through the plot. The label read, "Proposed Subway Extension Line B." The station entrance was positioned exactly where the luxury shopping center was supposed to go. His hands started shaking. "Where did you get this blueprint?" "I negotiated the deal," I said. "I received all the documentation, including the city zoning plans. You signed the final contract without asking me a single question. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because the night I came home, I looked him dead in the eye, pronouncing every word crisply. You moved another woman into our bedroom." Donovan's face lost the last traces of its color. He stumbled back a step, his shoulder hitting the wall. "You did this on purpose." "I didn't do anything on purpose." I took my phone back. "I simply stopped wiping your ass for you." "How many times have I done it over these 2 years?" "You'd get drunk. I'd pick you up. You botched negotiations. I fixed them. I picked out the birthday gifts for your parents. I even wrote the college recommendation letter for your sister. I adjusted the sleeve of my dress, letting the jade bracelet catch the light. Donovan, I am not your mother, I am not your maid, and I am not a vase in your mansion. You never actually wanted me. You wanted a manager to solve all your problems, and a woman who would pout and worship you. Alyssa is perfectly suited for the second role. I wish you both happiness." I walked down the hallway without stopping. Behind me came the sound of a dull thud against the wall. Probably a fist. Alyssa was standing just around the corner. She looked terrible. In her hand, she clutched that $5,000 vintage pearl necklace. "Cassidy Jenkins, did you do all this on purpose?" "Yes." "You wanted him to regret it?" I stopped and looked at her. "Whether he regrets it or not doesn't concern me anymore. Stop acting like a saint." Her voice turned shrill. "You married someone richer, and now you came here to humiliate us. Who do you think you are? Who do I think I am?" I turned around and walked right up to her. "Alyssa, the slippers you wear are mine. The vanity you use is mine. The man you're hugging is the one I threw away." She took a step back. "The house you live in? I picked it. The bed you sleep in? I chose it. The plates you eat off? I imported them. Even that citrus tea in your fridge, I made it myself." I stopped inches from her face. In my heels, I was half a head taller than her. "You are covered head to toe in my leftovers, and you're asking me who I think I am?" Alyssa's lips trembled. She couldn't force a single word out. I smiled, reached out, and took the pearl necklace from her hands. She tried to snatch it back, but a single look from me froze her in place. I held the pearls up to the light. $5,000 for this. Let Donovan reimburse you." Her expression shifted. He didn't give me the money. Alyssa bit her lip, tears welling in her eyes. I laughed out loud, dropped the necklace back into her hands, and patted her shoulder. "Cherish it then. After all, you bought it yourself." Walking back into the ballroom, I was still smiling. Gavin, seeing me, raised an eyebrow. "Sorted it out?" "Sorted." I sat down, picked up my knife and fork, and resumed cutting my steak. It was cold by now, but I didn't care. "Gavin. The subway blueprint." "Thank you." He didn't say anything. He simply swapped my plate of cold steak with his piping hot one. 3 days after the charity gala, Pierce Corp's problems detonated. First, the city officially released the South Seaport District subway expansion plans. That morning, Pierce Corp's stock plummeted by 12%. Furious investors screamed at Donovan on conference calls for 40 minutes. The core message was uniform. Are you blind? Do you not check city planning before buying land? Donovan didn't make excuses, because he genuinely hadn't checked. He had trusted me too much, or rather, he was too used to me handling those details for him. In the past, on every project, I was the one who analyzed the paperwork and verified the fine print. All he had to do was sign his name and bask in the glory. This time he signed his name and lost me. The second disaster hit later that afternoon. Pierce Corp's largest supplier abruptly announced they were terminating their partnership. Official reason: strategic restructuring. But Donovan's assistant found out that the day before, a subsidiary of Caldwell Industries had signed an exclusive contract with that supplier, offering a 15% premium. The third followed immediately. Construction at Pierce Corp's massive logistics center in New Jersey was halted due to environmental documentation violations. Donovan had personally overseen those documents. Then came the fourth, the fifth, the sixth. In 3 days, Pierce Corp's market valuation dropped by nearly $400 million. Donovan's father, Preston Pierce, flew back from Europe. At an emergency board meeting, he absolutely ripped his son apart right in front of the senior executives. "You put the whole company on the line for some woman?" Donovan sat at the far end of the boardroom table and said nothing. Because all of it truly was his fault. When he brought Alyssa home, he didn't think about the consequences. When he kicked me out of the master bedroom, he didn't think about the consequences. When he watched me walk out the door with my suitcase, he didn't think about the consequences. Now the consequences had arrived. Each blow was precise and agonizing, like a perfectly orchestrated chain reaction. Because it was a perfectly orchestrated chain reaction. In Gavin's office, an entire wall was covered by a massive whiteboard. Pinned to it were organizational charts of Pierce Corp, project maps, supplier lists, and partnership webs. Every line was drawn with surgical precision, and a takeover plan was attached to each. He had been preparing these plans for 3 years. 3 years ago, at our business school alumni mixer, Donovan had kept trying to get me drunk. I didn't get drunk easily, but he didn't know that. He kept walking over with a glass, saying, "Cassidy, you handle your liquor incredibly well," pouring me more and more. He wanted to see me make a fool of myself, to prove to everyone that the woman who had outperformed him academically was actually nothing special. Gavin had pulled me away from the table. He guided me to the restroom corridor, handed me a bottle of water, and stood by the entrance, refusing to let anyone pass. He didn't say a word that night, but starting from that day, data concerning Pierce Corp began accumulating on his whiteboard. "You've been preparing this since then?" I stood in the doorway of his office, staring at the board. Gavin sat behind his desk with a red marker in his hand. "Yes. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you still liked him back then." He set the marker down. "I didn't want you to think I was forcing you to choose." I walked into the office and sat across from him. The name Donovan Pierce on the board was circled heavily in red. Dozens of lines radiated from it, and every single one had a check mark next to it indicating completed. "How much is left?" I asked. "The final step." Gavin pulled a file from his drawer and placed it in front of me. "Their logistics center in New Jersey. It's their final source of cash flow. If we cut this project off, their operating capital runs dry in a month." I opened the file. Inside were copies of land use agreements and zoning maps. "Is there something wrong with this plot?" "No." Gavin leaned back in his chair. "The land is good, the location is prime, the paperwork is flawless. Donovan actually didn't make any mistakes on this project. Then how will you?" "I'm not going to touch the project." I looked up at him. The light from his desk lamp reflected in his eyes, revealing absolute, chilling confidence. "I'm going to take his people." The next day, the chief engineer of the New Jersey project, along with his entire technical team, collectively resigned from Pierce Corp. Donovan offered to triple their salaries. Not a single person stayed, because Caldwell Industries offered them not just a salary but equity. On the 5th day, Donovan sat alone in his corner office at the top of the Pierce Corp tower. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows lay the most prestigious district in the city. His father had built this tower 10 years ago, 38 floors up. Donovan's office was at the very pinnacle. From here, you could see half the city, including the even taller skyscraper belonging to Caldwell Industries. His assistant walked in carrying a document. "Mr. Pierce." "The bank has replied." Donovan didn't turn around. "What did they say?" "All 3 banks have denied the credit line extension." The assistant's voice grew fainter. "The cited reason is significant uncertainty regarding Pierce Corp's financial stability." Donovan pressed his palm against the cold glass. The chill seeped straight into his heart. "And one more thing." The assistant placed another document on the desk. "A private equity fund owned by Caldwell Industries has submitted a buyout offer." Donovan whipped around. "A buyout for what?" "For Pierce Corp's stake in the South Seaport District and a 51% controlling interest in the New Jersey Logistics Center." "The price?" The assistant swallowed hard. 60% of market value. 60% wasn't a buyout, it was highway robbery. It was having a knife held to your throat while your pockets were emptied. Donovan grabbed the offer and scanned it. The terms were laid out with brutal clarity. Every word breathed arrogant calmness. No threats, no pressure, just a statement of fact. Your company is on the brink of collapse, and I am the only one willing to buy it. On the last page, the signature was already there. Gavin Caldwell. The handwriting was sharp, piercing. Donovan hurled the document across the desk. He's dreaming. The assistant didn't move. Mr. Pierce. This afternoon, several board members held an emergency meeting. They voted to accept the buyout offer. Donovan froze. What? 7 votes for, 2 against. Your father, Preston Pierce, voted yes. Preston Pierce voted yes. His own father sat in a boardroom and voted to sell the family company to an outsider. Donovan collapsed into his executive chair. The leather chair he had sat in for years, molded to the shape of his body. In this chair, he had signed countless documents, made countless decisions. He always had it his way. Now, even this chair might cease to be his. His phone buzzed on the desk. A text from Alyssa. Donovan, I saw an Hermes Birkin today. Limited edition. Can you buy it for me? It's only $80,000. Donovan stared at the message for a long time. Then he picked up the phone and dialed a number. Not Alyssa's. Mine. My phone rang while I was watering the plants on the balcony of Gavin's apartment. An unknown number flashed on the screen, but I knew it by heart. I answered. Cassidy. Donovan's voice was raspy, like it had been scrubbed raw with sandpaper. Did he orchestrate all of this? What are you talking about? Gavin. He's buying Pierce Corp. It was all calculated. The plot in the Seaport District, the team in New Jersey, the banks, everything. I set down the watering can and leaned against the railing. Donovan, you signed for the Seaport plot yourself. You failed to retain the New Jersey team yourself. The banks aren't giving you credit because your company is bleeding out. Every single decision was made by you. A long silence on the other end. My biggest mistake wasn't any of that. His voice suddenly dropped. My biggest mistake was the night I let you walk out of our bedroom. The evening breeze carried the scent of flowers from the gardens below. Donovan, I said, your biggest mistake wasn't letting me walk out of the bedroom. Then what was it? It was that you never considered me important. I hung up and blocked the number. Gavin, I hadn't noticed him approaching, was standing in the balcony doorway holding 2 mugs of tea. Was he calling? Yes. What did he say? I took the mug. The tea was a pale golden color. He said, you calculated everything. Gavin leaned against the doorframe and took a sip of his tea. He's right. And what exactly were you calculating? I looked at him. The evening light caught in his eyes, making them look soft. I was calculating you. Donovan discovered the full truth on the day of Pierce Corp's official acquisition. The signing ceremony was scheduled in the exact same grand ballroom at the Plaza Hotel where the charity gala had been held, where he had seen me wearing the sapphire necklace beside Gavin. Gavin did this on purpose. He rented the entire ballroom and arranged the tables and chairs exactly as they had been. Even the floral centerpieces were identical. When Donovan walked in, he froze for a second. He recognized the room. He saw the place card at the head table with the name Gavin Caldwell, and right next to it, Mrs. Caldwell, just like that night. Only this time, he wasn't a guest banished to the corner. He was the man coming to sign away his company. Representatives of Pierce Corp's shareholders sat on one side of the long table, Caldwell Industries corporate lawyers on the other. When Donovan entered, everyone looked up at him. No one stood up. Even his father, Preston Pierce, sat in the corner with both hands resting on his cane, staring at the table. He didn't look at his son once. Donovan signed the documents. The sound of his pen scratching against the paper was soft, like something tearing. After signing, he set the pen down. Where is Gavin? Gavin's lead attorney looked up. Mr. Caldwell is not attending the ceremony. He asked me to pass on a message to you. What message? He said, thank you for the South Seaport District plot. You saved me a lot of time in negotiations. Donovan clenched his fists. At that moment, The doors to the ballroom opened. I walked in not as Mrs. Caldwell, but as Cassidy Jenkins. Cassidy. Donovan jolted upright, as if struck by lightning. I didn't look at him. I walked straight to the table and placed a thick file in front of his father. Mr. Pierce. This is the initial geological survey report for the South Seaport District plot. This report was in Pierce Corp's archives long before your son ever signed that contract. Preston Pierce took the report and flipped through several pages. His face twisted. Donovan. The old man's voice wasn't loud, but it echoed across the room. Did you see this report? Donovan froze. What report? The geological survey report. It says right here, in black and white, that a subway line runs beneath the plot, and it is unfit for commercial development. This report was delivered to your office 3 months ago. Donovan's face went completely pale. Impossible. I never received that report. You received it, I said. Every eye in the room turned to me. I personally placed it in your inbox on your desk. The date was March 12th. It was a Monday. You came back from a morning meeting. There were 7 documents in your inbox waiting for your signature. This report was the 3rd one. Donovan's eyes darted frantically as he tried to remember. March 12th, he muttered. You left work early that day, I said. Because Alyssa called and said she wasn't feeling well. You went to pick her up. You took her shopping. That night, you posted on Instagram. 9 photos. The center photo was her tossing a coin into a fountain. Donovan's hands started trembling. You never came back to the office. Out of the 7 documents, you only signed the top 2, the remaining 5, including this report. You never even looked at them. The room was dead silent. Thwack! Preston Pierce slammed his cane against the floor. Donovan! Donovan's shoulders flinched violently. Because of a woman, you stopped reading your own corporate briefings? Donovan stayed silent. He stared at me. His eyes held a complex, agonizing mix of emotions. You knew the report was in there? He said hoarsely. You deliberately placed it 3rd. You calculated all of it. You knew I wouldn't see it. Why didn't you warn me? I smiled. Donovan, I was your fiancé, not your secretary. Helping you with your paperwork was my goodwill, not my obligation. When you started taking my goodwill for granted, don't act surprised that one day I decided to only fulfill my actual obligations. Preston Pierce stood up. The knuckles of the hand gripping his cane were white with rage. Did you hear that? You have no one to blame but yourself. You held the reins to this company for 5 years. What did you actually achieve? Every single success you had was because Cassidy was standing behind you. Did you really think you were a genius? Donovan couldn't utter a single word. Preston Pierce leaned heavily on his cane and walked toward the exit. Passing by me, he stopped. Cassidy. The old man's voice softened. The Pierce family has failed you. There's no need for that, Mr. Pierce, I said. It's all in the past. He nodded and kept walking. At the doors, he turned back and looked at his son. Donovan. When your grandfather founded Pierce Corp, he had $50 in his pocket. It took you 5 years to hand 3 generations of legacy over to an outsider. The doors shut. The only people left in the ballroom were Donovan, me, and a few lawyers packing up the documents. Donovan leaned against the table, looking as if his spine had been removed. Cassidy. When did you start planning all this? Since the day you let Alyssa sit in the passenger seat for the first time, his pupils contracted. He had probably forgotten that day entirely, but I hadn't. It was our 1-year anniversary. I had booked a restaurant, bought a new dress, and waited for him downstairs. He pulled up. The passenger door opened, and out stepped Alyssa. She had twisted her ankle, and he held her by the waist to support her. Alyssa was on the way, so I gave her a lift, he had said, as casually as commenting on the weather. I barely ate anything that night. Alyssa sat across from us, smiling innocently. Miss Jenkins, please don't get the wrong idea. Donovan and I are just friends. Donovan had nodded in agreement. That was the first time I saw Alyssa in the passenger seat. But not the last. Donovan, I said, do you know that women never leave suddenly? Every departure is the culmination of accumulated disappointment. Why didn't you tell me? I did. I looked straight into his eyes. I told you many times. I texted you to come home early. You replied that you were busy. I asked you not to let anyone else ride in the passenger seat. You said I was being petty. I told you Alyssa looks at you differently. You said I was imagining things. I pulled out my phone, found the chat logs from a year ago, and turned the screen toward him. I saved every word you said. Donovan stared at the screen, his eyes progressively turning bloodshot. Did you think I didn't know your phone passcode was her birthday? Did you think I didn't know that on your business trips you brought back souvenirs in pairs? Did you think I didn't know she helped you pick out my engagement ring? Donovan whipped his head up. How? How did you? Because the manager at the jewelry boutique is my friend. The receipt for the ring had both of your names on it. Donovan swayed on his feet. Cassidy, on the day you proposed, the fireworks were beautiful, I said, my voice as calm as if I were narrating a story about a stranger. But the man standing under those fireworks, from that moment on, was no longer you. I turned around and walked out of the ballroom. Behind me came a heavy thud. Donovan had collapsed to his knees. The sound of his knees hitting the marble floor was heavy, like a sack of cement dropping from a height. I didn't look back. In the hallway, Gavin was waiting for me. He wore a dark blue suit, no tie. In his hand, he held a paper cup of hot tea. Told him? I told him. He handed me the tea. The warmth seeped through the cardboard cup. He's on his knees. I know. Gavin looked at me. Feel sorry for him? I took a sip of the tea. Caramel? No. I looked up at him. The hallway light softened his sharp features. Gavin, I said. Donovan Pierce is on his knees, but the man standing next to me is you. He froze for a fraction of a second, then smiled. Let's go. He held out his hand. I placed my hand in his, and we intertwined our fingers. The doors to the grand ballroom remained open. The shadow of Donovan kneeling on the ground stretched long and warped, looking like a fracture in the marble floor that would never heal. After I left, Donovan remained on his knees for a long time. Eventually, hotel security had to pull him up. The head of security, reporting to Gavin on the phone, struggled to contain his shock. He said Donovan knelt for almost 40 minutes, his knees bleeding from the impact. Gavin hung up the phone and looked at me. He wants to see you. I flipped a page of my magazine, not even lifting my head. I don't want to see him. 3 days later, Donovan's mother, Patricia Pierce, came to Gavin's office. This woman rarely made public appearances, not even at board meetings. She wore a simple but elegant dress and carried an Hermes Birkin. Her makeup was flawless, but the fine lines around her eyes betrayed her age. When the receptionist called up, Gavin and I were playing chess. Let her up, I said. Gavin looked at me. Are you sure? I'm sure. Entering the office, Patricia's eyes immediately locked onto me. She stopped in the doorway, unsure of how to address me. Cassidy? Mrs. Caldwell? Ultimately, she said, Cassidy. I stood up. Mrs. Pierce, please have a seat. She sat down, placing her handbag on her lap. Cassidy, I didn't come here about the company, she began. I came because of Donovan. I remained silent. Donovan hasn't left his room in 3 days. He hasn't eaten, hasn't drank anything, hasn't spoken a word. I went in to check on him. He was sitting on the floor, holding a photograph. Patricia pulled a photo from her bag and placed it on the desk. It was a picture of Donovan and me, taken 2 years ago at the beach. He had me up on his shoulders, and I was screaming in mock terror while he laughed like an idiot. He found this photo among the things you left behind, Patricia said. You didn't take it with you. I didn't need to take it with me. Patricia's eyes grew red. Cassidy, I know Donovan has wronged you. He was blind, entirely intoxicated by that Alyssa girl. But now he understands everything. He knows he made a mistake. Mrs. Pierce, I interrupted her. What exactly does he understand? She froze. He understands he was wrong. Wrong about what? I looked her directly in the eyes. Wrong to bring Alyssa into our house? Or wrong to not check that geological report in time? Was he wrong to kick me out of our bedroom, or was he wrong to assume I would never actually leave? Patricia didn't know how to answer. He doesn't realize his mistake, I said. He just cannot accept the price he had to pay. If Gavin hadn't bought the company, if the Seaport plot had been perfectly fine, if he was still the almighty Donovan Pierce, do you really think he would have been on his knees in that ballroom? Patricia's lips trembled, and her tears finally spilled over. But he is in so much pain right now. He earned it. When leaving, Patricia stood in the doorway for a long time. She didn't beg anymore. She just looked at me with a gaze that mixed profound regret, pity, and ultimate resignation. When the door clicked shut, Gavin picked up a black knight and moved it to the corner of the board. Checkmate. I looked at the board. My white king was cornered. You win. You let me win. He started resetting the pieces. You started throwing the game on move 37. I didn't deny it. A week later, Donovan was discharged from the hospital. He had been admitted for 5 days with severe dehydration and a bleeding stomach ulcer. On the day he was discharged, a paparazzi snapped a photo of him outside the Greenwich estate gates. In the photo, Donovan wore a gray hoodie, the hood pulled low over his face. He had lost a terrifying amount of weight. Behind him stood the house where I had lived for 2 years. The Dutch tulips in the garden had withered. The photo hit the internet with the headline, "The Pierce heir, broken and defeated." Alyssa commented on the post, "Donovan, I will always be by your side." 3 hours later, Donovan deleted her comment. 2 hours after that, Alyssa posted on her own account, "Some people don't value what they have and only regret it when it's gone. But in this world, there is no cure for regret." She probably thought Donovan would see it, but his account had already been deleted. Half a month later, Gavin and I held our actual wedding ceremony at the Caldwell family's sprawling upstate estate. No press, no lavish spectacle, only our closest family and friends. Gavin's grandmother, sitting in her wheelchair, smiled the entire evening. After we exchanged rings, she took my hand. So beautiful. Even better than the picture. "What picture?" I asked. His grandmother pulled a photograph from the side pocket of her wheelchair, the exact photo from the alumni mixer. "This boy kept this picture on his desk for 3 years, she smiled. "I kept telling him, if you like the girl, go and win her. And he just kept saying, I can't. She's with someone else." I looked at Gavin. He was talking to a friend, but the tips of his ears were visibly red. At the end of the night, the estate manager brought over an envelope. "Mr. Caldwell, someone left this at the front gates." Gavin opened the envelope. Inside was a cashier's check and a handwritten note. The amount on the check was exactly 3 times the original purchase price of the South Seaport District plot. The memo line read, "Offer to buy back the South Seaport plot at original valuation." On the note, there was a single line written in Donovan's handwriting. "Cassidy, I've bought the company back. Can you come back to me?" Gavin handed the note to me. I glanced at it, then folded it into quarters. "What do you want to reply?" Gavin asked. I held the folded note to the flame of a candelabra on the table. The fire licked the heavy paper. It curled, blackened, and turned to ash, drifting away. Nothing. Gavin watched me for 3 seconds, then held out his hand. "Then let's go home." I placed my hand in his. His palm was warm. When we walked out the massive iron gates of the estate, night had already fallen. Underneath a large oak tree near the entrance stood a man. A gray hoodie, the hood pulled low over his eyes. Donovan. He was even thinner than before. Seeing me, he took a step forward. Gavin's grip on my hand tightened slightly. "I don't need you to handle this," I murmured to Gavin. I let go of his hand and walked toward the tree. Donovan's eyes lit up frantically. "Cassidy." I stopped 3 paces away from him. "I received the check. The plot isn't for sale." He froze. "I'll pay any price. It's not about the money." I pulled a heavy crimson envelope from my clutch and held it out to him. Donovan took it with shaking hands and opened it. Inside were Gavin's and my names, embossed in silver. He held the wedding invitation, his hands trembling violently. You came out here just to give me an invitation?" "Yes. The wedding was today. This is for you." My voice was dead calm. "Donovan, you always said I never leave a path for retreat. Today I left one. This invitation is your path of retreat." "What path?" "The path to your regrets." He looked up at me, his eyes entirely bloodshot. Cassidy, I really understand everything now. Just give me one more chance. Just one. Donovan, I cut him off. Do you know the biggest difference between you and Gavin? He froze. When you were kicking me out of the master bedroom, you told me, take care on the road. But when he handed me the keys to his apartment, he said, you already have the keys, don't you? The night breeze blew past us. One pushed me out, the other pulled me in. Who do you think I would choose? Tears finally streamed down Donovan's sunken cheeks. He collapsed to his knees right there under the oak tree, clutching the crimson invitation. Cassidy. Donovan, if you learn one lesson from this entire ordeal. I looked down at him. Let it be this. Not everyone who leaves comes back. I turned around and walked back to Gavin. He held out his hand, and I took it. The moment the car door shut, I heard a hoarse, ragged scream from behind us. Cassidy! The sound dissolved into the night wind, like a wound that would never heal. I didn't look back. The car merged onto the highway. The city lights blurred past the windows. Gavin had one hand on the steering wheel. He turned to me, then reached over and took my hand. Are you going to cry? No. And you never will again. I leaned back against the leather seat, watching the city rush by. No. I never will.